Hello again. I'm Elizabeth All, and I'm back with you today with a change of wardrobe. Today, I want to discuss with you the Russian Revolution and tell you all about the players in it. It was really a perfect storm of events. First of all, what I believe, and I've been studying this and pondering this, the reason why I think the Russian Revolution started was because of World War I. And I'll tell you why. It's because so many millions of soldiers were killed in the war, and they finally had enough. And it was more than 3 years they were having this war, and they just went AWOL and left their units and took their guns with them. And they started fighting in the streets of St. Petersburg and Moscow. There was no food to eat in the streets, in the fields, anywhere in the country. There were long lines. There was no flour for bread. So people were fed up, and there was a lot of violence in the streets. People were killing each other. Homes were being sacked, like I said last time. And it was just a horrible thing. And also, people like to blame Tsar Nicholas II. Well, I don't really blame him. He was a good Tsar, but not the best. He was not strong. He was fairly weak. And he had a wife, Alexandra, who was very, very controlling. And in a book that I read, the Empress, the mother of Nicholas said, well, she just made a rag out of Nicky. She was always riding him and telling him what to do. And she was changing ministers in the government. And she had Rasputin there with her, helping her with her child who had hemophilia. And he was there praying for the little boy. And every time he would pray for the little boy, he would get better, because there's no cure whatsoever for hemophilia. So that's why she kept him around. And he was a vagrant. He was a self-taught priest. He traveled around. He was filthy. He had a terrible reputation with the ladies. He drank a lot. So he was getting a really bad reputation in the society of St. Petersburg, and particularly because he was asking the Tsarina to change ministers and and to let him help her do all these things for the government, and people caught wind of that and didn't like it. So that was one of the reasons. And, excuse me a minute. And I wanted to tell you that I read a book. I've read many books about Trotsky. He was one of the leaders of the revolution, and he was the one that directed the Civil War, which was right after the revolution. It was a civil war between the White Armies and the Red Armies. The White Armies, of course, wanted the Tsar back. But he conducted the Civil War on the Tsar's train, and he put his Red Terror to good use on everybody he came in contact with. And I read in a book, and I'm going to quote him, he said, the revolution would have never happened without World War I. And I really believe that. It was one of the reasons, I know that, and I think that was the major reason. It was as they say, it was a perfect storm. That's right, perfect storm of events. And also, a lot of people thought that Alexandra, the Tsarina, who was a granddaughter of Queen Victoria, she married into a German royal family, the Hesse family. And this was totally untrue, that she was spying for Germany. Not true at all. And they proved it later. She loved Russia, and she was heartbroken when they went to war. So all of the stories they told about her were not true. The only thing she did wrong was try to rule the government. When Nicky was away from the Alexander Palace where they lived, he was going to the headquarters, the army headquarters, and trying to run the war, and she was back home running the government and running it to the ground. So that's where part of the fault came. And then the poor Tsarevich, he was, when he died, he was almost 14, but he was a beautiful boy, and he would fall down many times, and mostly his leg would get swollen, and he would bleed on the inside, and there was nothing anybody could do. And the parents wouldn't let him take painkillers because they didn't think that was good for him. But he would be screaming all through the night, and poor Alexandra would be there by his side. But then Rasputin would show up, and everything would get better. So those are the reasons that I think the revolution started. So right now, I'm going to show you some pictures. I don't know if you've seen all the pictures of the major people in this story. But first of all, there's Lenin here. He was the one that came back from Switzerland right after the first revolution in February. He came in on a German train that was sealed because the Germans wanted him to start a revolution. And then Stalin helped him to continue the revolution. And here is Trotsky. He led the civil war all over Russia in the Tsar's train, I might add. I think I told you that. And here is poor Nicholas. He is imprisoned in his palace. It's a horrible picture of him, but everybody has seen this picture. Very famous. And these are the soldiers guarding him. He's outside because he liked to be outside. He liked to do a lot of exercise. I'll show you a picture of Rasputin right here. Not too attractive. Certainly not for the Royal Society. I hope you saw these pictures. I'll show these to you again. Hope you see them. And they, after they left the Alexander Palace, where they lived for many years, they went to the governor's house in Tobolsk, and they were pretty comfortable there. Then things got pretty radical in Russia, especially in Siberia. And so they decided, the Russian government, the Soviet government, that is, decided to move them in another way to Ekaterinburg, which was the hotbed of the Soviets. And this is the house where they moved them. In Ekaterinburg, can you see that? And they called it the House of Special Purpose, which is a very eerie name. But, you know, the Russians talk like that. You know, they have these crazy names they make up. The House of Special Purpose. That was where the royal family stayed. They stayed there, I think, 5 months, and they were not treated well there at all, even though they had 4 servants there with them to help them, because they're not used to taking care of themselves. And they were murdered, finally. It was tragic. The 4 servants and the royal family, all 7 of them, were murdered right down in here in the basement, right here where that door is. And this is, well, this man, I don't know if you recognize him, you might not. This is Boris Yeltsin, and he was the first president of the new Russia, in 1991, and that was when, I think it was like a year and a half after the Berlin Wall came down, and everybody was so excited. I couldn't believe it. I didn't think it would ever happen, but I was so happy about that. So he became the president of Russia, and I remember him in a tank, you know, kind of not really fighting, but kind of arguing with Gorbachev, I think it was. But Yeltsin is from Ekaterinburg. And in 1977, he ordered the House of Special Purpose to be demolished, which is too bad, but he did. The whole thing was knocked down because he thought that too many people, too many pilgrims, so to speak, were coming there to see where the royal family, where they were murdered. So I'll let you look at this a little bit longer. I think there's Trotsky right here. Trotsky. I think that's, yeah, Trotsky. Lenin, Stalin, and Nicholas, the Tsar. No, he's no longer a Tsar in this picture because he abdicated, which was a big mistake. He shouldn't have done that, in my opinion. And there's Boris Yeltsin, and that was in 1977 that he tore down the House of Special Purpose. And of course, Rasputin, who did a lot of damage. And again, he was murdered by Grand Duke Dmitry and Prince Felix Yusupov. So I want to talk to you about the royal family a little bit. You're not going to be able to see these pictures very well. You see all these people there gathered together at a party. They're standing and some are sitting down right at the bottom there. These people, most of them, I would say more than half. I stopped counting at 18. They are either children or grandchildren of Queen Victoria. It's amazing. Let me get out of the way. Here is Queen Victoria sitting there. She's in black, the older lady. Whoops. Can you see that? Queen Victoria in the middle. And I notice a lot of people in there that are dramatized in the Russian Revolution. Alexandra's 3 sisters are in there. One of them was murdered by the Bolsheviks. But it's amazing. I mean, and here is the Emperor of Germany, who started the war, basically. There he is, and he was in love with Alexandra. And there's Alexandra right here. And Nikki there. But she wouldn't have anything to do with him. But he was a grandson of Queen Victoria. I mean, all of these people here are either a child of Victoria or a grandchild. Not all of them, I would say. I stopped counting at 17 or 18, and it's because I couldn't see all their faces, but some of them are Russian. I see a Grand Duke Serge. I see King Albert, who was Victoria's son. So anyway, Queen Victoria had 9 children, and 40 grandchildren. So, and they all married into the royal families of Europe. And another interesting note about this is, I hope you can see this, these 2 ladies here and here, they were sisters, and they were Princess of Denmark. And this one became married to George V. So she became Queen Alexandra of England. And this one is the Dowager Empress of Russia. And this is Nicholas. Oh, I'm sorry, I got it mixed up. She married his father. I'm sorry, I got that. Albert VII. And that's her child. And this is her sister. These two girls are sisters. And she married into the Romanov family. She married Alexander III, and they had Nicholas as their son. I hope I re-explained that right. Let me go over here. This is Princess Alexandra from Denmark, and she married King Albert VII of England, and they had this child who became King George V. She married, let's see, Alexander III and of England, of Russia, and they had Nicholas II. So these are first cousins, and these two ladies are sisters. So that's how it worked back then. And of course, here is the leader of Germany, or the king, I don't know, I don't remember what they called him. And he was a first cousin, also a grandchild of Queen Victoria. And here's a better picture of the two Danish princesses, looking a little bit better. They were widows in these two pictures. They look a lot nicer there. Not so sad. And I'll go over some of these people with you. Of course, this is Tsar Nicholas II. And this picture has to be the most beautiful oil painting of him. It's in the Tretyakov Museum in Moscow, and you must go there to see it. They have it sort of hidden away, and I had to ask the docent to show it to me, and she had to go find it. It was like on the 3rd floor, but I insisted. I had to see this painting. It is so beautiful. It's by Serov, I believe. It is. You see it a lot in the books. It is a beautiful painting of him. Now, let's see. I have to talk to you about this chair. You see this chair? It's like a Queen Anne chair. It's in the corner of the Tsarina's mauve boudoir. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but she had a sitting room in the Alexander Palace, and everything in it was the color of mauve. It was so luxurious. Down, feather, pillows, comforters, you name it. And a piano, she had everything there. She had all these sofas. This was her favorite chair, and she had it in the corner. You will see it in a lot of photographs in almost every book that's written about them. Well, when I was in Russia, I went to see the Alexander Palace, and I made sure that I went to see her bedroom. And my gosh, it's exactly there in that same place. I walked by that place so many times, and I felt, you cannot believe how wonderful it was just to be in that corner. See, there are windows here, and the drapes, they were there. I'm sure they're not the same ones, but and there's this little lamp hanging down with a cloth lampshade. It's so beautiful and so English looking. See that? So they wouldn't let me sit on the chair, but that's okay because it really wasn't her chair. It was just a reproduction, but it was a thrill for me. And I may have showed you this before. This is the Alexander Palace. And it's beautiful. And in the front, right here, they have two matching bronze discus throwers. They are unbelievable. They're so beautiful. I believe they took them down during the war. The Nazis were inside here. They camped out here in World War II. Did a lot of damage. Now, I'll go to the little Tsarevich. Everybody calls him the little Tsarevich. He was so darling. Here's Nicholas II, and there's his son, the heir. It's a little fuzzy picture, but they were so cute together. They dressed alike. It's a shame. It really is. I think I showed you this before, but I'm going to show you again. This is the Catherine Palace. It's enormous. It's near the Alexander Palace. And both of these palaces are 15 miles out of St. Petersburg. And in a way, it's a good thing that it was, because the Germans never got to St. Petersburg inside the city. They starved the people of St. Petersburg. They had a blockade. And a lot of people in St. Petersburg died. They starved to death, but they never got into the city. They ransacked these castles, palaces, and other palaces outside of the city. Zarko Selo is a beautiful little town. They now call it Pushkin, who was the famous artist. Famous poet. Okay, now here, I'm going to go to the girls. The girls were absolutely beautiful. There were 4 girls. You see them there? They were absolutely lovely. And they loved their parents. They were good to their parents. They wrote them letters, even though they lived in the same palace together. And they were with them all the time. They never went anywhere. And if they did go anywhere, they had 10 chaperones with them. And I'll tell you what their names are. This is Olga and Tatiana, who I think is the most beautiful. She's very Slavic looking. She's absolutely gorgeous. This is Marie. And Marie, she had an admirer. It was Mountbatten of England. They were first cousins. And I'll tell you how that worked. Mountbatten's mother was Victoria, and she was a sister of the Tsarina Alexandra. So they were cousins, but he always had a crush on her and was devastated when she was killed, and he kept a picture of her by his bed all his life. He just loved her. They could have never been married because they were first cousins. The Tsar wouldn't allow it. This is Anastasia, which we've all heard about. The Polish lady, the actress that pretended to be Anastasia for God knows how long, 60 years, she turned out to be phony, because they proved that she was not Anastasia through DNA. And thank goodness, because I've read many books about her, and she was married to a professor at the University of Virginia, and he would come into a room when people were there, and he would say, "My father-in-law is the Tsar of Russia," which I thought was very amusing. But she was not, she was murdered with everybody else, and they have found her body. They found all of the bodies. And this is the little Tsar, Alexis, when he's young. He looks like he's about 2 or 3. I want you to notice something. Hope you can see this. See the photographer? He takes all the pictures around the palace, and this is on their ship, the Standard. You can always see his reflection. Not always, but many times you can see his reflection, and he's always wearing that hat. I just think that's so humorous. I just wanted to point that out. I don't know if you noticed it or not. I'll show it. See it? And another funny thing, they called the girls Otma, O-T-M-A, for Olga, Tatiana, Marie, and Anastasia. And if they wanted to include the little boy, they just added another A for Alexis. Or if they wanted to say the two older girls or the two younger girls, they would say the little pair or the older pair. It's right. Let's see if I've done anything here. And here's another beautiful picture of the children when they were a little bit older. You can see that. There's a little boy, and there's Anastasia and Marie and Tatiana and Olga, and the parents right there. Beautiful. Let's see if I've covered everything. Just one moment. Oh, I wanted to tell you something about Prince Felix Yusupov, who was married to the Tsar's niece. And Irina was her name. And when they went to Paris, and I think America too, MGM, the movie maker, they made a film that was called Rasputin and the Empress. And they showed Felix and his wife Irina in a very unattractive way, and they didn't like that at all. So they sued MGM, and they were given a very hefty sum, and they were able to live on that throughout their life. You have to remember that all of these immigrants, they left with nothing. I mean, everything was taken from them. They had no money. They had some of their jewelry, but not much, because the Soviets took everything from them. And they could only get out with maybe a few things. And 18 of the 36 Romanovs were murdered, and then there were a lot more aristocrats. Thousands of aristocrats were murdered. Or they went to prisons. They died in prisons. They were not fed. They were beaten. Anyway, tomorrow we are going to talk about something really special to me. First of all, going to Russia. Traveling there. I've been there twice with my husband, and it's wonderful. It's a marvelous place to go. You will love it. And we're also going to talk about not so new. I've known them for about 12 years. I have a good friend who is a Prince Romanov, and I want to tell you all about him, and that will be tomorrow. So get ready, sharpen your pencils. You're going to enjoy this.